to DDRC members, staff, and guests. Multiple staff members are present to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly and all applicants and citizens are able to communicate with the commission at the appropriate times. If you are here today and would like to speak about a case, please provide your name clearly into the microphone, and please be sure to sign in either at the back of the room or at the podium for documentation purposes. If you are here today to speak about a case, you must speak up when the chairperson calls for public comment.
And I'll read the roll. Ms. Sims Branham.
Here.
Mr. Broom.
Here.
Ms. Jaco.
Here.
Mr. Lee Decker.
Here.
And Mr. Salibi.
Here.
We have quorum.
In order to avoid ex parte communications, DDRC members are under strict instructions not to discuss cases under consideration with the public or with each other outside of the public forum. The meeting typically starts with staff calling the case, giving a summary of the project, and then calling on the applicant to present if they wish. Decisions are typically made in one evening. Decisions may be appealed within 30 days to a court of competent jurisdiction. Oaths will be administered individually as we hear either from applicants or from live speakers. Applicants with requests before the DDRC are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time does not include any questions asked by the DDRC or staff regarding the request. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. Applicants may have 5 minutes to respond. Staff has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. Are there any changes to the agenda?
We have one change to the agenda. The historic case, 2353 Stark Street, a request for a certificate of design approval for construction of a duplex in Old Chandon Lower Waverly Historic District Area A has been deferred.
The DDRC uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. If a member of the DDRC or the general public wants to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the agenda and then considered during the meeting. The DDRC then approves the remaining consent agenda. Will staff please review the consent agenda?
Certainly. Our first case is 1405 Somerville Avenue, a request for design approval for an accessory structure in the Cottontown Bellevue Architectural Conservation District. The next is 2123 Pendleton Street, a request for design approval for construction of a single-family house in the Old Chandon Lower Waverly Historic District, Area B. 2327 Stark Street, request for certificate of design approval for construction of a duplex, Old Chandon Lower Waverly area, Historic District Area A. 969 Height Street, request for certificate of design approval for construction of a single-family home, Old Chandon Lower Waverly Historic District Area A. And finally, 3021 Gadsden Street, request for preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill and for a certificate of design approval for exterior changes in Irwood Protection Area, Area A.
Is there anyone from the DDRC that would like any item removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda?
Point of order, please. I'm Jim Daniel,
Yes.
property owner in Wales Garden, although a very small property owner. The item dealing with Innery Avenue, is that just going to be an information meeting today?
Right,
Or will
so
y'all actually vote on the?
That is on the regular agenda, so that hasn't been discussed yet. Right now, we're talking on the consent agenda.
Okay, I thought y'all were finished with that. Okay,
No.
all right.
I like your speed, though. I'm moving. But yeah, no, it will be on the regular.
Now I'm up here. Is that going to be just an informational meeting today?
It will be whatever it becomes. It's going to be presented to the commissioners, and then it will be decided then.
Okay, well then I'll represent again.
Okay. All right, thank you. Was anybody from the public, any question on the issues with the consent agenda? I haven't heard any. Because once we approve the consent agenda, we will not be discussing the consent agenda. All right. All right. Do I have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda and also the May minutes?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items and approve the May minutes.
Second.
Mr. Broom,
Yes.
Ms. Sims Branham,
Yes.
Ms. Jaco,
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker,
Yes.
and Mr. Salibi.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right. And now we will move on to the regular agenda, to the first case.
So the first case on the regular agenda is at 1043 UG Street. This is in the Innovista Design District and is a request for certificate of design approval for new construction. I'm going to read through the summary of the project, just highlight a couple of the areas where changes are recommended, and then I'll read the staff recommendation. A hotel was reviewed and approved by the DDRC for this property in November of 2020. Since, the property has been sold to a new developer who's also proposing to build a hotel. While some aspects, such as the site plan, are similar or identical, the design of the building is new, so will be evaluated as a new proposal. The request is for the construction of a 4-story, 123-room hotel at the corner of UG and Senate Streets. There is a large storm sewer pipe that runs diagonally across the site, which includes a 50-foot easement, which structures cannot be built on. This daylights into an open culvert on the adjacent property of Stormwater Studios to the southwest. The applicant plans to move forward with the same site improvements, landscaping, and right-of-way improvements as were approved by the DERC and by City Council through the encroachment process. And so those plans have been included and will be considered part of this proposal as well and are referenced herein. So the first staff comment that is related to recommended changes is under 3.3, proportion of openings. Let's see, I'll get to the elevations. So the recommended proportion of openings in the guidelines is 70% on the first floor and 40% on the upper floors. This proposal does a pretty good job meeting and exceeding the first floor recommendations for proportion of openings, but on the upper floors, the UG Street percentages are 21.2 and Senate Street is 28. So it says the lower than recommended percentages is in part due to the large amount of wall above the fourth floor windows, in addition to the brick recessed areas where the building's interior program is not compatible with windows. While the window openings do not appear to be significantly out of scale with the facade, they could be slightly larger to get a bit closer to the recommended percentages. And under 3.4, wall articulation, the staff comments are that building has defined bays, as noted earlier, is very well articulated at the street level with brick detailing, storefront panels with transoms and paneling. The canopy is a nice feature for shade and articulation. Altogether, there's a lot going on, and the first floor facade reads a bit busy. A recommendation might be to eliminate the composite storefront paneling so that the storefront windows and transoms sit cleanly within the punched brick openings and between the nicely detailed columns. Let's see. Under 3.5, roofs and upper story details, the staff comments are the roof is flat, consistent with the buildings in the area. The parapet and cornice provide nice detailing with brick corbelling, which would stand on its own without a change in color to the white brick. The recessed brick panels above the upper floor windows appear extraneous, and staff recommends the elimination of these where they are not in place of windows. And then on 4.0, exterior walls and materials, the red field brick and lighter red accent brick provide subtle detailing consistent with the traditional style of the building. The white brick at the base and on the parapet helps to tie in with the lighter paneling color. However, the white brick at the column bases somewhat detracts from the visual base of the building. As well, having white brick along the sidewalk on a busy urban thoroughfare may prove to be a cleaning and maintenance issue. And finally, on 6.1, cornice and fascia, the cornice of the building provides three different configurations of cornices, appropriately emphasizing the corner bookends with more ornate design. The corner of UG and Senate is even beefier and throws off the symmetry of the UG Street elevation. A simpler approach would be to stick with the two cornice designs, having the larger, more ornate cornice on the prominent corner bays and the simpler cornice everywhere else. So the staff recommendation is to approve the request conditional upon the following items: that the site plan improvements as specified in the encroachment ordinance 2022-032 be implemented by the developer, conditional upon eliminating the articulated panels in the brick band above the upper floor windows, eliminating the composite storefront panels and the white brick at the base of the columns to provide a continuous red brick base, streamlining the cornice design as noted, increasing the percentage of upper story window openings by at least 5%, providing a minimum window depth of 4 inches for the brick encased windows, and that all other details be deferred to staff. And Wentz Chesson, the architect, is here to answer questions. He wasn't going to do a formal presentation, but it is available if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Will any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Are you going to have some questions, comments? I have some comments. Yeah, okay, let's bring the applicant on up then.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Wentz Chesson, the architect.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to open it up to commissioners for any comments or clarifications.
Well, first of all, I wanted to have one clarification because you didn't mention it, or you did and somehow I missed it, that was part of a different comment. But I generally agree with all the comments that the staff has said. And I wanted to point out the fact that you also included under the storefront panels that they also eliminate the white brick at the base. Because I think that's an important point as well, that I think that brick looks out of place and not in keeping with how it should look on the nice facade that we have along UG or Senate Street. So I agree with that. I just want to be sure that we had noted that, which you do in the comments. The other comment, and I agree with the cornice simplification, frankly, I just agree I agree with all of the comments. I'd just like to add one more comment, and that is that I am quite a bit concerned about the, let's see, let me just refer to it exactly like you have it, the architectural block in gray. Now, I know exactly what that is, I'm an architect, but I'm very concerned that that will look like unfinished concrete block along along UG Street. I realize that's not, but I don't see any precedents that you've given us. You haven't given us any context. And I frankly do not think that this is an appropriate use of block at where it's located on this prominent UG Street that we have to look like unfinished concrete block. And we just simply can't have that. So I'd really like to add, my thoughts would be to the commissioners is to add a comment that be considered to be a different color or a different material perhaps, but to have what will appear to be unfinished concrete block because it is gray is very detrimental to the look of this hotel that in just to compliment you, I mean, I like the undulations of the facade. I mean, you've done a really nice job, but that particular material is just bringing the entire design down.
Okay.
Any other comments? Any commissioners? Commissioner Decker? Yeah.
I do have a comment. I have a concern with the parking access. And Lucinda skipped over this. There are 2 entrances to the parking lot, one from UG, one from Senate, and the Innovista Design District guidelines say that you should use the UG Street. It's called a B Street. You should not use an A Street access. For some reason, and Lucinda, maybe you can help me with this,
Yeah, I mean,
you
that's.
say it needs a second.
Staff, just pause 1 second, I'm sorry. We got one monitor not working here. Okay, good, thank you. All right.
Something about the site plan necessitates an access from Senate. And I'm trying to understand when you have a good access from Hugie and the design guidelines say, don't use a Senate Street access.
Right. So, I mean, just like all of the guidelines, everything is looked at, with the particular site in mind, and every site has different challenges and different opportunities. To be honest, the site plan hasn't changed since it was originally approved by DDRC in 2020. We had more conversations at that time with the civil engineer and the site design team about the access points. I can't remember the details, but I mean, I think it probably has to do with the fact that it's probably very difficult to come out on UG Street and turn left. So this provides an opportunity to come out of the site and go around the block and take a right on. I'm sure they've had conversations with DOT in terms of curb cuts and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different considerations. Certainly, the design guidelines are a consideration. That recommendation did come from the master plan, which has a diagram of entrance and exit points that should be followed. Again, that's diagrammatic, and this site shows up as a green space in the master plan as well. So, I mean, sometimes we can't follow every guideline per the letter. Again, I don't know if the applicant, do you have any information about the site access, or?
I didn't design the site. It was there when I started.
But I mean, it's not a bad question.
Yeah.
That's all I can answer to that.
Comment about how it could be difficult to turn left out of the single entrance. We can go up and down Hugie Street from Elmwood to Whaley and find any number of businesses that just have no other option when they're turning left. My favorite example is the suites up at the north end of Hugie's. What's the name of it? Homewood's, not Homewood Suites, but there's a hotel at the north end of Hugie. The only way in is through Richland Street. The only way out is through Richland Street. So that hotel developer didn't find a problem with this type of limited access. And when you say that these are guidelines, sometimes they apply, sometimes they're more important. I'm looking at the language in the code ordinance that says should is a mandatory term. And I don't know why we're bending the rule. And it's very clear there shouldn't be no access on Senate Street. So regardless of what happened in 2020, we're in 2024. It's a new proposal. If we close that access, eliminate it, it doesn't look to me like it's a huge cost expense. You may gain an extra parking space in a lot. So my recommendation would be close the Senate Street access. You're giving me the nod. Are you okay with that? Okay.
I think that's,
My point is done.
I am a little concerned about, first of all, let me just address that, back to Lucinda's point about should and must are two different words. Should is a recommendation, must is a non-starter, I would say, just if semantics is important. But what I would say is each site is unique in that with the amount of potential cars that need to access the site, the busyness that's happening along UG, I think would cause more concerns for this area than the fact that there may be some other cars that are coming off of Senate Street. But I would think the majority are going to come off of UG, and as Lucinda pointed out, DOT does not allow another entry that would help alleviate that, that's that close to, because of the size of this site in particular. So that's my only concern, is that we might be causing more traffic congestion by coming in and out of one entry rather than dispersing it a bit.
I don't think traffic congestion is part of the Innovista Design District guidelines. Our remit is to apply the guidelines, and it's very clear, should not be any access points from Senate. One other point I will make is, I used to do a lot of environmental impact analysis. You look at a development project, you look at short-term, long-term, direct, indirect impacts, and when you get done looking at the impacts, beneficial or adverse from each project, then you look at what are the cumulative impacts. And in this case, we have a very clear cumulative impact. We have a hotel across the street on Senate, which also has an access from Senate, which is against the guidelines. So if we put another access point at this hotel, we're effectively removing this from the B Street or the A Street criteria. It will not be possible for a pedestrian or a bicyclist to go from Williams to Hugie without crossing one of these vehicle entrances. It's a safety issue. 2 weeks ago, I attended a training by the planning department about pedestrian safety and traffic design. It's very clear you don't want to have traffic and pedestrians and bicycles in the same space. So
I biked here today. I biked here today. That counts.
Staff, I was trying to think, what's our precedent on something like this? Because I don't
I guess
remember
it's a little bit tricky, and the
Yeah.
reason being that typically, I mean, the site plan is within the DDRC purview, I mean, to a degree, right? Because there are guidelines in here that do talk about site access, orientation, that kind of thing. The plan for the developer who bought this property was to move forward with the approved site plan, and they changed some of the architecture. There is nothing, I mean, the site plan has not changed since it was approved. So I guess, I mean, the staff was kind of coming back with a new architecture design and wasn't really looking at changes to the site because they weren't really proposed. It was sort of like, these are changes to a new building design with the same site. They did go through city council and get the encroachment improved, which includes the on-street parking, the streetlights, the trees, the sidewalks, the driveways. I mean, all that's kind of like got an approval. So it was really asking for an architecture design. So it's not to say that these aren't within the purview of the DDRC. I don't disagree with some of what you're saying, although I will say there's not a single street or bike facility in this city or many others that don't have to cross in front of a driveway. I mean, that's just, it's not practical to think that we're not going to have any driveway entrances on certain streets in the city. I mean, it's going to happen because of various circumstances that have to do with, this site and others. So, I mean, it would be up to the commission. This also goes through staff reviews. It doesn't meet the threshold for site plan review, which would go to the planning commission because it's only 70 some odd thousand square feet. But it does go through the different city reviewing agencies that look at things like, curb cuts and traffic patterns and sidewalk, it'll go through that process with staff. If the DDRC as a board decides that they want more information or want to, I mean, that's up to the board. If that particular guideline is enough for you not to be comfortable with it, then that's why you guys are here.
Thank you for making that distinction between the site plan and the architecture. One point about the site plan that was brought out in the public comments is that the existing site plan, and I understand now that it might not have been considered by the new developer or the new property owner, is that it didn't include street lights or street lamps along Senate Street. Is it y'all's intention to continue with that portion of the site plan? Or
I'm not.
don't know.
So
Can
the
staff
staff,
speak to
the
that?
staff recommendation was that the site plan improvements as specified in the encroachment ordinance listed as 2022-032 be implemented by the developer. Those improvements include all of the detailed light locations, tree locations, sidewalks. I mean, all of that's in the encroachment, which was approved by city council. So the intent was that nothing is going to change. If anything about that changes, then that process will have to come back.
Thank you.
I have a question
Go ahead, Bob.
on the floor plan, the first floor. Is, suppose I'm going to check into the hotel, and would I be entering the front door on the catty corner of Senate and Hugh G?
Probably not. I mean, I think the hotel is designed like many of them in the urban setting where there's people going to be driving up and dropping their luggage, but there's still an entrance on the corner. I mean, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. The entrance on the corner is more of a secondary entrance, but it will be an entrance. Like when you drive up to the hotel, you're going to go around the back and the pullover area. And then, when you're walking home from the game, you go through the entrance, which is the grand entrance. And okay. I'm sorry. Did you hear that?
Not all of it.
The corner entrance is a secondary entrance, but it is an entrance.
Where is the main entrance?
I'm sorry?
Where is the main entrance?
The main entrance, as you pull up to the hotel, is in the back where she's pointing. Yeah, it's kind of near there, but right there. Yeah, I mean, when
I don't see it.
unload the luggage, and then later, you're coming home from the game, you can go through the corner entrance, more grander entrance.
I see it.
You go in there.
Very small plan. I couldn't see it.
I know. I can't see any of that. I know. Light.
you want your,
Just so I'm clear, back to the site plan for a second. We are not It is not under consideration for approval at this time because this is just about the new architectural design of the hotel. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, that was the intent. I mean, I guess the point is since the urban design guidelines, and this is being looked at as a new proposal, talk about, I mean, the entrance points, if that point is enough to, recommend denial or deferral or whatever, I mean, that's up to the commission. I think the site plan has been approved, but that's still, it's not an official site plan approval. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's gotten a planning commission approval yet because it's not going to planning commission. It'll be a staff level approval for.
Because of the south.
Right.
Maybe getting to the architecture, I've got one question for the applicant, or well, maybe a few, but one for now. So the glazing, or I guess the use of windows and the percentages, the proportion of openings, I guess it's called in section 3.3. Generally, and I understand these are guidelines, and there's really no language like should or shall or must, but it generally recommends a slightly less than 2-to-1 ratio from ground floor to upper floors. And so, on the Senate Street side, seeing the entire facade, it looks proportional. Along UG Street, it seems a little lopsided, and with that being one of the main corridors in Columbia, I think it's maybe more important to kind of get closer to that recommended ratio. What are your thoughts on increasing that? And I understand staff recommends increasing it by at least 5%, but I think at least along UG Street on the upper floors, it would warrant maybe at least a 10 to 15% increase. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I've gone through an enlargement of all the windows one time by about 10%. And on the Hugie Street side, I mean, the whole facade you're referring to,
Just the
2-to-1
UG.
or 2-to-1?
Right, yeah,
UG.
so if you look at the Senate Street percentages, it's, 28% for the upper floors, 54.3% for the ground floor.
Yes, we can go
Which
bigger.
is fine.
They're really big windows already, but
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I
there is
love
that
more
whole
light.
wing of the building that is nothing but brick, that has those carve-outs, and I'm wondering, could you add additional windows there, or maybe increase the size? Something to make it look a little more proportional.
I can amp it up another 10% on all the windows. I think once we do, you do all of them.
Okay, so you wouldn't have a problem if we made that recommendation?
No.
Thank you.
I mean, as the applicant, did you have any concerns with any of staff's recommendations?
No?
Okay, just checking.
I just wanted to hear her
Right.
comments and did, and that's my job, is to, make everybody happy. I got the owner, the client, the other clients, the city.
Sure.
And I love doing it.
So just for my clarification, you would have no problem just having access off of UG Street, as Mr. Wadecki is?
I don't see an issue with that. I think I understand his comments and concern, and that's a side issue. I'm talking it as an architect. But we'll go over that with the site designer, engineer. No problem.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
Can we talk a little bit about the articulated panels? The staff recommendation is to eliminate them from the top level above the fourth floor. And when I look at those panels, I'm reminded of coming into the Vista, and you see a lot of older historic buildings with infilled windows. As soon as you come into the Vista, the Mellow Mushroom at the top of Hugie has got filled-in windows, and a lot of other buildings have this treatment. And maybe the Trustus Theater is a great example. It used to be a showroom for tractors and farm equipment, and then it got a new program, so they filled in the windows. On the modern buildings, you see that too, and it's evocative of, all right, somebody's found a new use for an old building, and that kind of warms my heart. So I'm happy with these panels. I'd like to get some reaction from the architects on the panel, Mary Beth.
Yeah.
I agree with your comment, but I don't know that it really applies to this particular architectural design. I think making it a little bit simpler, other than the ones that are on the, on that one elevation that the staff recommended, keeping them on the side, which I think is a stair on the corner. But I don't have a problem with, well, let's just put it this way. I think it adds to the fact that the concrete block-looking area is even more simplistic and gray in tone by adding too much articulation on those facades, and that I'm fine with taking those off as long as those gray concrete architectural block is addressed. So I'm kind of okay with deleting them, but I understand, I mean, I think that the signage where the sign of the building would still be that kind of articulation you're talking about, Charles, the one that has the name of the hotel, because it's usually kind of where the name of the building had been, usually too, where that recess part is. But I think because of the repetition of it, following the window sizes, and the size of that cornice seems a little too articulated.
Okay.
But I understand where you're coming from. But I'm fine with deleting them.
I agree with both of them.
Did we have agreement? All right, okay. Any other questions for the applicant from commissioners? All right, thank you. I think we move, was there anybody from the public who wanted to speak on this case? On this case?
Not the entry.
20 years ago, when the Hampton
Well, hold on,
Inn,
I'm sorry,
Jim
okay.
Daniel,
Yeah, hold
20 years ago.
Sir, hold on. I got to swear you in. Are you talking on this case on Hugh G. Street? Okay, so state your name,
Jim Daniel,
and do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
All right, thank you.
20 years ago, when the Hampton Inn was being looked at, it was coming to Columbia. I was on the Columbia Development Corporation board. I don't understand why this issue about main entrances off of main streets still is not being dealt with. We got the developers for the Hampton Inn to agree to, granted, everybody comes in the rear, but we got the developer with the Hampton Inn to agree to have a, pretty substantial entrance off of Gervais Street, because time has told that people come in the rear when they drop off, but then they go out the front door to eat and socialize and all this other stuff. We've had that discussion on the Hyatt. I don't understand why the architects have not realized that you gotta have an entrance facing where people are gonna go to have supper or socialize. Don't make it just a tiny little door there. I mean, the Hampton Inn dealt with that 20 years ago. Why are we still debating that?
Thank you. Any other public comments on the Hugh G. Street?
I just wanted to recognize on the record that we did get an email that was, I think, forwarded to you all yesterday about this, which is from Paul Gaffney. Just to acknowledge that y'all did receive that email. Okay.
All right. Well, there's definitely been a lot of interesting discussion, so I think I will make sure I'm looking where we're at. We're through public comment. I'm going to open it up for, throw it up, open to the commissioners to see if anybody wants to make a motion.
I can make a motion for approval of the project 1043 UG Street, TMS 08911-01-05, et cetera, subject to the following conditions. And I will be adding one about the parking and adding one about the unfinished concrete block.
And also the window percentages, if
Window
if possible,
percentages.
if you agree. It's your motion.
Thank you for your assistance. I read these. That the site plan improvements as specified in the encroachment ordinance 2022-032 be implemented by the developer, eliminating the articulated panels in the brick band above the upper floor windows, eliminating the composite storefront panels and the white brick at the base of the columns to provide a continuous red brick base, streamlining the cornice design as noted, increasing the percentage of upper story windows by at least, and what number am I looking? 10%. 10%. Providing a window minimum depth of 4 inches for the brick encased windows, and eliminate the vehicle entrance on Senate, and eliminate the extensive concrete block. All other details to be deferred to staff, period.
Do we have a second?
Second. Very good.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Ms. Sims Branham?
Yes.
Ms. Jaco?
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
And Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Next case.
Oh, there were two.
All right, this is 1803 Enery Avenue. It's a request for preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill and for a certificate of design approval for an addition. This is a two-story stucco house built in 1920 in the Wales Garden Architectural Conservation District. The building itself is largely intact architecturally, except for a side porch originally that is now a sunroom off to the right there, and a rear porch that has been modified beyond recognition. The new owner is currently requesting to build an addition off the back of the house, 2 stories behind the main core of the house and a smaller 1-story extension behind the enclosed sunroom. The overall design is intended to reflect the character of the historic house using stucco, roof details, and windows to match. The addition will also be inset from the outer walls of the historic house to maintain original corners and differentiate the old from the new. The Bailey Bill is also part of the renovation of this property. As for guidelines for additions, the guidelines for the district itself state to limit the size and scale of an addition so it is clearly subordinate to the original structure. The proposed addition is quite large. It over doubles the size of the house. However, in the past, we have approved, or DDRC has approved, additions such as this with making sure that the addition itself is not as wide as the house, the original house. So that inset is always something that we require. We have had cases where the architect has used a hyphen, so an even further inset on a small portion directly attached to the house, and then the full mass of the addition behind the hyphen would often come out to be as wide as the house itself behind that. So that would make the addition a little bit wider, actually, if they were to do that. In this case, staff did recognize that the scale was quite large, but as it's off the back of the house and set, it's fairly consistent with other approvals that we've had in the past. The biggest difference with this property is that 100 years ago when this house was built, it was built very close to the street. So recognize that it is going to be highly visible. However, I included, it's kind of hard to see in this, but the revised site plan for the house shows the main core of the house. It looks a little bit odd. It looks a little squished because they don't have the sunroom delineated out from the main structure. Based on the measurements provided, when you include the porch, the addition would be about 9 feet longer than the house itself. So it is more than doubling the size of the house. However, we have had cases like this approved. This is a house in Cottontown, which actually has more guidelines for new construction than Wales Garden does. It was a modest size house in the beginning. They did use a hyphen to kind of inset from one side, and then the mass of the addition off the back. This was approved with the Bailey bill in 2018, and that is what you see. It's not technically on a corner lot, but it is next to a cemetery, which will not be developed, so it will always be very visible. Also, in terms of size and scale, the overall size, the house itself originally is fairly modest in size for Wales Garden, which has fairly large houses throughout, some more modest bungalows. But if you can see in this, the size of the house itself on its lot is kind of highlighted in green. I don't know if you can see that very well. But the size of the original house is fairly modest compared to the houses around it. The addition, the overall finished size of the addition will not be out of scale for the neighborhood. The largest issue is that it is very close to the street, and we recognize that, but unfortunately that's an existing condition which we cannot control. Other additions on the back of corner lots have been approved in this district before. They too have used hyphens, so that may be an option for this if the DDRC believes that the scale is too large. The drawings are not articulated. There's not a lot of detail on them. The house is stucco. The windows will be matching, as will the stucco on the addition. The roof line was suggested by staff to match the roof line of the front porch so that it does not compete with the main roof, which has a very steep, prominent roof. For the Bailey Bill guidelines, they state that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the historic property and this environment. As I've already stated, to be consistent with this standard for the Bailey Bill, we typically require that the addition be behind a house, inset, walls inset to differentiate the old from new, and the overall height to be equal to or less than that of the existing house. And this design does meet those guidelines. Standard 8 states new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. Again, this goes back to why we require people to inset walls. That way, it could literally just be shaved off the back of the house if wanted in the future. And the original house itself would still be intact. For staff recommendations, staff finds that the project at 1803 Emery Avenue complies with section 17-2.5Y of the city ordinance and recommends granting preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill with the following conditions. Historic materials in the house will be maintained and preserved with repairs in kind if needed. This includes original windows, doors, woodwork, and stucco. If any features are found to be highly deteriorated during the course of repairs, staff will be notified to evaluate the condition and ensure any replacement materials are in keeping with the standards. Project meeting or exceeding the 20% investment threshold requirements for qualified rehabilitation expenses. All work meeting the standards for work as outlined in section 17-2.5Y, and all details deferred to staff. Second recommendation, staff finds that the proposed addition at 1803 Emery Avenue is in keeping with Section 5 of the Wales Garden Design Guidelines and Section 17-2.5Y and Section 17-2.5GE of the city ordinance, and recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. Details on the addition will mimic the look of the historic house, including stucco, roofing, eave, windows, and foundation details. Windows will be aluminum clad with exterior muntins to match the design and profile of the historic windows. The final window design to be approved by staff prior to purchase. All other window details will match the historic windows, including dimensions and placement. If any features are found to be highly deteriorated during the course of repairs, staff will be notified to evaluate the condition and ensure any replacement materials are in keeping with standards and guidelines. Parking pad area, driveways, and all paving details to be approved by staff with updated site plan prior to installation, which they have since provided. All other details deferred to staff. And then to note, we did receive 3 letters in writing that have been forwarded to the DDRC prior to the meeting. One from Mr. James Daniel, one from Mr. Manning Smith, and one from Mrs. Elizabeth Smith.
So I do have a list of who has signed up from the public that we'll go through, but I'll open up first. Any commissioners have any questions for staff or clarifications?
I have a comment to the applicants. I'll just say this as kind of a general comment for anyone who submits something to the DDRC, that the materials you submit for our consideration, the quality of the renderings and the detail of the renderings goes a long way in us understanding the intent of the design and thereby helping everyone understand how this addition might work. I mean, the original house is absolutely beautiful. It has unbelievably great overhangs that I think are extremely beautiful and give to the character of this house. I cannot tell from the renderings that this is going to be maintained in the one rendering that was sent in. And all I can say is that it's going to be hard for me to approve this based on the information that's been provided unless there's some assurances and some long list that I give you about what the architectural detail must contain, because it is not clear that it will. I understand the proportions and the other things, but if we are not in keeping with the architectural design of the original, and it may be detailed that I haven't written. Is it written somewhere in the application that it's going to match exactly all of those details?
It was not. I have been going back and forth with the homeowner for months, and he basically asked me what materials would be approved, and I listed them out for him, telling him these are the types of things that would be approved. And as I mentioned, stucco would need to match, the windows would need to match. Overhang, eave details, roofing details, all that stuff would need to match, which is why I put it in the...
In the recommendations?
Yeah, in the recommendations.
Is the applicant here today? Are they speaking today?
No, they're not here.
No, I wasn't sure.
And I probably do have an email where that is in writing where he says yes, I just did not include that.
So this is a question for staff. Is it appropriate for the DDRC to request that more information be provided that shows us that that indeed would be happening? Or do we assume that if
you would like to see it, that's appropriate to ask for, I believe.
I was going to say, I think we have in the past, and we've
Yeah, we
done
can ask for-
we've done design, we've done all types of things that I've been part of in the last 4 years, so
Okay.
Yes.
that is all within our purview.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, good questions, yeah.
Quick question for staff. So, I mean, the guidelines clearly envision new additions to Baileyville properties or historic properties for Baileyville purposes. And you pointed out size becomes an issue, and you pointed out DDRC's prior consideration in Cottontown. Do you know what the considerations were, what the justification was for approving that?
I mean, I think they just said it was inset to meet the guidelines, just like this one is.
Yeah, I think the only thing that God's massing would be if it has to do with the amount of roof area that's zoned to the proportion of the site, and that's not under our, but if it meets those zoning guidelines, that it doesn't exceed I think it's 40% of the total.
Oh, sorry,
Right.
that's not what I'm referring
Not
to.
like coverage.
Much- Yeah, a little less detailed than that. I mean, so for example, 17-2.5YA1 says that alteration, and I'm paraphrasing, the alterations of spaces that characterize each property shall be avoided. You know, arguably doubling the footprint alters the space that characterizes the property. So I was just wondering what DDRC considered in the past when approving an application that similarly doubled the size.
Well, so with that particular standard, I would interpret that as massing. So if they were to want to remove the sunroom or something like that, that would not be approved because that's altering a space that's part of the original part of the house. So I've never interpreted that one as pertaining to additions, but that's how I've interpreted it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Now, I do agree that the hyphen, not in addition to the addition, but within the addition would do a lot for the perception of the massing.
Right. Keeping the same.
So that
Length,
almost
but-
the after the hyphen, the addition would almost match the size of what the house originally looks like, which
Right.
would be way better proportionally for the massing that we're, I think, all a bit concerned about, so.
Yes, staff does typically recommend hyphens, but
Yeah.
this is what the architect presented.
Commissioners, y'all good if I start the public comments?
I want to agree with Mary Beth about the drawings. You know, we're talking architecture, and, you know, this is not architecture. This is just a dogmatic drawing, and there's a lot missing there. You can describe everything, what's going to be done, not good enough. It's got to be a picture, detail, so we can all understand what we're getting.
Yes, and I will say, staff has requested all of that, but cannot control the quality of drawings that are received. So, which is why I put in writing and emails, these are the things that need to be checked. That's why we put it in the conditions. These are the things, boxes that need to be checked, because we can't control the drawings that we receive. We just have to have confirmation in writing that those conditions are going to be met. And I will say too, just working through this process in the past many times, I have not had any contact with this architect. It's been strictly through the homeowner. But more critical in our process is for me to be in contact with the contractor once they start the work than the architect, because a lot of times architect drawings just get thrown out anyways. So, you know, that's always my goal, is to contact the contractor and be in constant contact with them when they're doing a project of this scale to make sure that they are following all the conditions that we put in place.
Can I see the elevations again? Yes. Please, Rachel. Okay, even the rear elevation doesn't look like the eaves match to me. I bet even the front elevation doesn't look like it's the correct eave.
I believe there are some discrepancies in the existing building proportion and details that they're showing. Yes.
So again, not everyone, again, this is just about how to submit things for everyone's understanding and approval of the design intent. We're not saying everyone needs the most sophisticated 3D software, which, by the way, is very common these days, but if you don't, at least elevations need to reflect the detail of, so Bob and I are not implying that you have to have 3D renderings, but elevations, two-dimensional drawings can certainly depict the detail that's necessary, so.
I totally agree with you on that, and it is something we constantly try to encourage homeowners to do. This is not that far off from what we typically receive for residential projects. They don't tend to be as detailed as commercial projects. So we do, that's why we have so many conditions we have to put in, and we have to watch them from start to finish.
No, this is not a thing on staff
Oh, no,
by
no,
any
no, I
means.
know.
This
I
is-
just-
yes.
Another thing is, I noticed, if you pull the front elevation, and if you look at the picture of the house itself, they don't match.
No. I don't think it had a
Look
front
at the
elevation.
front door,
I guess that.
it does not match.
I apologize, I don't think we included a front elevation in the PowerPoint, but it is in the packet.
No.
But yes, there are discrepancies, which is also not, unfortunately, not uncommon.
Right. Might be in here. All right.
And you know, in most situations, when it's not quite as complex, let's say, of an addition, a simplified drawing might be acceptable, and I think we've certainly seen that and been able to approve it. My concern is that this particular addition is significant enough to request that more information be provided that is more clearly identifiable, and to add some recommendations like a hyphen and things to enhance it, to really get the complete design intent. That's just my discussion with my fellow members here today about requirements and how to best sell your project to meet the guidelines. We want to make it easy. We want to approve really great work. But I simply don't think we have enough information. We would have to list out so many different, and I'm sure you have, Rachel, listed out every single little thing that needs to be done, but I'm comfortable with you making sure those details are done. I'm just not, I just feel like we as a group maybe should see some more information, just my thoughts.
Okay. No, thank you. All right. Now with that, I'll start on the public comment. Kit Smith, please come up. And when you get up there, if you
I
could.
can, thank you. And after
Yeah.
that discussion, maybe I don't need to be up here. So thank you very much.
Sure.
We share those concerns.
Let me swear you in real quick, Kit. So first, to state your name,
Catherine Smith,
and do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm president of the Wells Garden Neighborhood Association, and our executive committee has followed this issue closely. We've been in dialogue with Rachel when we could catch her, welcome home, and Amy was a good pinch hitter. They've been delightful to work with and given us as much information as they can, but as you see, there's a shortage of information. We had a lot of discussion and division in our community about whether just to ask outright deferment. Our recommendation, and the community has evidently accepted, is to go forward, get everything out we can today, and hope that in the future they'll come back with some information that we can all take a better look at. So we're glad to be in that dialogue. The most relevant issue for us was also the size. We think that the parking may have been resolved. At one time, it was going to be a different parking plan. Staff worked very well with the applicant to revise that, and we're grateful for that. It could probably be tweaked a little bit more to be even more conducive. As was pointed out, our streets are very narrow, and the lot line is part of the yard. I mean, the city owns part of the street for all of us, so it's a very difficult challenge for this gentleman to add on a massive addition in the back of the lot and not disrupt the feeling of our community and the need for our community. I know that small houses want to get bigger, but in our community, we have such a diversity that we truly cherish. Cottages, and if someone came and argued, well, they got to do it, they double the size of the cottage in the back, we might not have the diversity of architecture that we cherish. So we ask you to very carefully look at that issue as it develops along the way. What I'm going to say next is not germane. I just want you to know it. We are a neighborhood in tension. Every time a house goes on the market, we get very nervous. We are a stone's throw from the university. We're like the little boa constrictor that's been eaten away. And it was, oh gee, up to my knee, and now, oh my, it's up to my thigh, and we think, oh heck, it's coming to my neck. Student rentals and Airbnbs are very much a concern. And I know that you can't take that into consideration, but just know that's why we get an emotional reaction every time something like this comes up. So forgive our zeal, but applaud our zeal at the same time, and thank you for your service very much.
Thank you. All right, Tommy Johnson. And you come up and state your name.
Hello, Tommy Johnson.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you. Make sure you speak in the microphone.
Certainly. So I'm Tommy Johnson. I reside at 1807 Innery. Have been in the neighborhood for about 9 years and another 19 prior to that in the Hollywood Rose Hill. So I'm real familiar with the guidelines. Have participated in this process myself on my residence. Kit appropriately recognized the improvement that had been made with the parking design. That was my primary concern, being that the original design showed it coming right down the property line. It circulated traffic through the property, and in my opinion, the original design package did not adhere to the guidelines for the Wales Garden Historic Overlay concerning circular driveways and the circulation through the property. They just don't exist in our district. So I appreciate the new design with 12-foot drive lanes adjacent to the home. I'm real familiar with the property. I knew the original family that grew up there. There is a need for modernization inside the home. Glad to see that the Bailey Bill is being considered for that. It's going to be redundant, my comments, but I want them on the record. And I think the scale and design of this is, as y'all have pointed out, there's additional information that's missing. But based on the information that's been provided, the work and the design need to be more substantially adherent to the overlay guidelines. In my opinion, the current design does not appear to meet the standards, specifically Section 5 of the overlay. Regarding additions, it states that additions should limit the size and scale of an addition so that it is clearly subordinate to the original structure. Guidance on new construction also adds that breaking up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller, varied masses to maintain the streetscape. Do not construct single monolithic forms that are not relieved by variations in mass. And Ms. Branham, I believe, spoke to that with the hyphen comment. But we would ask, or I would ask, that additional design and review be considered before granting approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Jim Daniel.
Jim Daniel, Wheeler Hill resident, but lived for 26 years at 228 Watery Avenue.
And I think I already kind of swore you in earlier, but I'll just do it again. You swear to tell the truth during those comments.
Yeah, that's
Thank
true.
you.
And I basically have lived in the Hollywood Rose Hill, Wales Garden, or Wheeler Hill neighborhood for almost my whole life. Three issues that I got. I guess one, we needed this hearing to find out what's actually going to be there. The problem is we still haven't heard from the applicant. Rumors are going wild. I mean, you know, when you don't know enough facts to really know anything, it just gets passed on. So that's part of the problem I think we all face here is we quite frankly still don't know exactly what's going to go here. I spent a little time last night and I looked at, there's 6 houses in Wales Garden that face a major street with a side street access with a fairly large addition on the side street. I looked at the footprint of each of those and then compared it to this. Let's look at this one. If I'm reading their drawings right, this addition will basically be 138 times, well, it'll be 1.38 times larger than what is presently there. The house right now is around 1,200 square feet, give or take, footprint-wise, and this is going to be more than that. So, one, right off the bat, you get to a real issue with massing. This is not a deep lot. There's no survey of record that I've found yet. The deed refers to 20-foot lots, and when we won Watery, we had 6 lots, and they each 20-foot lots. So this, Right now, with the yard, the addition, the real house, and the 12-foot on the driveway on the back, you don't have room for anything else to fit. I know you're beeping me, and I've given you this, but the 6 houses I saw, the footprint increase with the improvements anywhere from 30% up to 108%. The largest one was mostly all garage, open garage, or screen porch. The others that were a little bit higher or lower than that, again, had an interior screen porch of some sort. So in a nutshell, I've given you what I found. I think this addition is way out of scale, or the mass is too big for where they're trying to stick it.
No, appreciate
This
it.
lot is not wide enough for 2
All right,
lots.
I think your time is up, I guess.
So-
Or-
Lot is not wide enough for 2 lots, so that's part of the issue too.
No, thank you. Manning Smith? And as you can tell, I guess you are being timed, or the timers are working. So, hi, state your name, please.
Manning Smith.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I beg your pardon?
Do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
Absolutely,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Elizabeth and I moved,
And just make sure you speak in the microphone so we can hear you.
Elizabeth and I moved back up from Beaufort 3 months ago and bought a house at 1725 Ennery. In 1969, I had the pleasure of being drafted into the Marine Corps. And when I first saw this rendering, I looked up and said, oh my God, I'm back on the Marine Corps. It looks just like a barracks from this side in the 2nd Battalion. And I thought, now wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place. We love this neighborhood. We really do. We adore it. And I just wanted to indicate to y'all, I looked at the law briefly, and y'all have a double standard here. Not a double standard, but you have 2 legal issues to approach. One of them is the commission's guidelines, but the other one is the Bailey Bill. And my reading of the Bailey Bill is that it is more restrictive than your guidelines. And I just wanted to make sure that y'all remembered that you're applying both here. You're using your Wales Garden guidelines, but you also have to be cognizant of what the Bailey Bill says. And my reading is it's a little more restrictive, and given both those, I don't think this meets it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dick Harpootlian. State your name, please,
Dick Harpootlian.
and do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
Yes. I've lived in this neighborhood for 50 years. I moved in 1975 onto Ennery, and then subsequently built a house on St. James, which is right around the corner from this. I've walked by that corner for 50 years. The McCravies owned the house before, and when Tucker McCravy died, the children took over, and then they've recently sold it. My concern is, I agree, the drawings don't, you can't tell what's going to go there, number one. Number two, this is an abomination. This is an institutional look. This could be, wasn't in the Marines, but I'll take him at his word that that looks like a Marine institutional building. There are several houses. By the way, when I moved into this neighborhood in 1975, it was on the decline. Wheeler Hill was a bunch of shacks, #1 heroin distribution area in the city. We that bought houses there, we were considered urban pioneers. My parents told me we were crazy. We ought to buy something in Forest Acres or somewhere outside the city center because it was going in the wrong direction. Well, guess what? There are 5 houses within 100, 200 yards of this house that are either valued at more than $2 million or people put more than $2 million into them recently. This street, this neighborhood is pristine. If you follow the street down, you're going to end up on Myrtle Court, which I think is the nicest corner of a neighborhood in this city. I agree, the Bailey Bill, the original historical property is subsumed by this monstrosity. I would urge you, I mean, you can carry it over, and by the way, the applicant didn't even have the courtesy to show up to answer questions. I would reject this. Let them reapply. Let's start from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart Hope? Oh, somebody signed you up.
Stuart Hope.
I'm not that good. But anyway.
Hope and yes.
And do you swear to,
Thank you for your time.
let me just swear you in real quick. Do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you.
I do. I won't rehash all of this. Again, thank you guys for your service. I think you know the issues here. And I know you can't drive by every house that comes up for review, but if you get a chance, we're 5 minutes down the road and you'll see how close this building is to the property line and the streetscape. And it's a good, great walking street that we all go up and down and love. If they can just come up with something that looks better, and again, it may just be a case of this is just, I hate to say crappy drawings, but I mean, you can't tell what you have here, and it's scary. It scares all of us because, again, all the rumors that are going around and so forth. So appreciate your attention. That's all I have to say. But if you get a chance, drive by and just take a look. I think you would see right away. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Paula Gordon? Hi.
I'm Paula Gordon.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
And the arm raise is not necessary, but
Well, I felt like I needed a Bible, but okay.
Thank you.
I live on the corner of Watery and Catawba, which is 2 blocks down from here. And what I think a lot of my questions have been answered, and a lot of your concerns are concerns that we've had. I'm a former history teacher, so history is very important to me, and historical significance of homes is very important to me. So this rendering does not speak to me at all. But what I'm concerned about is we don't, and I don't know if this is something that y'all address, and it probably isn't, because I have never been come to this meeting before, but what purpose is it being built to be so big? Is that something that we can find out, or is that something that we need to go through zoning to find out?
And I'm sure staff can help you with that too. But the purpose is not in our purview, but I guess that would be part of zoning and that process.
Right, if we're talking about building use, unfortunately, I don't know either, so that would be a zoning issue.
Okay, and so does that come if this person builds this house and decides that it's going to be apartments rather than a single home house, that has to go through zoning, is that correct?
Yeah, it's not zoned, I don't believe it's zoned for that. So the base zoning should protect against that. Whether or not it's a rental property, I can't tell you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, is it Kaylee Keister? Did I get that name right? Keister, all right. So great, come on up and state your name into the microphone.
Kaylee Keister. I'll do this too.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do. Thank you. Again, I won't reiterate a ton, but I think I'm one of the new neighbors in the neighborhood for about 2 years now, one of the younger members, and they've all welcomed me so openly since moving here. I think everyone in this neighborhood has taken such pride in their homes, and they have longevity. They've been here their whole lives, their whole careers, and that's something my husband and I hope to do as well. But I think on the same point, one thing I've noticed too is I think the lack of respect to the home. From what I can tell, what we've talked about, but also just the inside has been just stripped of its integrity, like Elizabeth and I have spoken about. So I think that just kind of shows the respect that's going to go into the home moving forward, which to me is pretty minimal, because those are the things that need to be preserved with this bill, and they're not doing that from what we can tell. So that's the point I'd like to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Staff, I have done everybody that have signed in on the list. Was there anybody who who is aware they signed in on the list that I didn't see? Okay, I was just making sure. All right. With that, I'm going to open it up for a motion.
Excuse me, I had to get my paper in order. Yes, I'd like to move to defer the request for preliminary certification of the Bailey bill for the certificate of approval for an addition for this 1803 Emery Avenue. I don't know if I need to read the BBILL 2024-0013. And recommend that if this is brought back before the DDRC, that more information be provided, and that in particular, the guideline B3 be in great consideration about the limit, the size and scale of an addition so that it is clearly subordinate to the original structure.
Second.
All right.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Ms. Sims Branham?
Yes.
Ms. Jaco?
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
And Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
The motion passes.
And I just had like kind of a point of order on this, because it's actually like two items, it may be two different motions down the road. But is it all covered by that one deferral? Okay, good.
I think it's
All right,
fine.
that's good. I was wondering that.
No,
Only because
good
it is the
point.
addition and the Bailey bill use, but yeah, all right. All right, thank you. All right, any other business?
Yes, we have lots of business today.
All right.
So I'm happy to report the council has appointed 4 new members so that we should be up to full capacity once again. We have to train those folks, so I don't anticipate that will be before August. But I wanted to share that good news. So hopefully, once we get them on board, all of you will be able to stop sweating quorum quite so much every month. So we're very appreciative of that. I also wanted to announce that the reason we started DDRC late today is that preservation staff received an award from the governor's office, from South Carolina SHPO, and Preservation South Carolina. They have several categories of awards. And we got a Preservation Service Award for all of the outreach and advocacy that staff has done, including the newsletters, the annual reports, the Pause for Preservation calendar, the workshops, everything else. And I just want to say that I just have to get out of the way and let them go to it. And they do such a wonderful job. And so the award is really for staff, those staff.
Yeah, definitely, congratulations, that's great.
Great job.
Yes,
There it
exciting.
is.
All right. Good job.
So, and last but not least, we need to get photos, I think today. Is Lee here? Lee's here.
Yeah.
Yes, so we want to get a photo of all of y'all before you leave for our reports, et cetera. So just for a minute, it'll only take 2 minutes.
I hate to mess with the plan. Would it be prudent to wait for the other 4 board members to join if the picture's going to be permanent, or at least for the next year? Sure.
Okay.
You'll have to do it again.
Amy, do you have names of the new members? Are
Pardon?
they the names of the new members?
I'm probably going to screw this up. Megan Thomas, Hunter McKenzie, Emily Gallo, and Joshua Shelton.
Do you know that?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes, I think we'll have some good new members.
No, that's great. Okay. Any other business?
That's it.
All right,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
all right. Sure, do we need a second? Yeah, there we go. All right, thank you. All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. It was exciting. Thanks, staff. Hopefully you can get back to your,
I would hope,
4, 5,
I had
hey, and also staff, were there minutes?